He's bullied at school for being poor but discovers a secret and everything changes. Tyler swallowed hard as the group of boys approached him in the school hallway. His blue eyes searched for an escape, but there was no way out. His small hands gripped the strap of his worn-out backpack as he tried to slip past Bradley James's crew, the richest kid at Lincoln Elementary School in Denver. "Look who's here!" Bradley blocked his path, pointing at Tyler's torn shoes. "The boy with the holy shoes. Has the sole completely fallen off today, or are you still using flour paste to hold it together?" Laughter echoed down the hall. Tyler felt his face burn with shame, his freckles standing out even more against his flushed skin. He tried to dodge around them, but Kyle and Mason, Bradley's best friends, formed a wall. "My mom said you don't even have a fridge at home," Bradley went on, swinging his imported lunchbox. "Is it true you keep your food in a water bucket so it won't spoil?" Tyler bit his lower lip, fighting back tears. It was true. Ever since his father, Michael, lost his job at the textile factory 8 months ago, his family could barely afford rent for their small house in Hopeville. The fridge had broken 3 months ago, and they didn't have the money to fix it. "Leave him alone, Bradley!" A girl's voice cut through the air. It was Emma, the class representative, a girl with long braids and round glasses. "Stop picking on Tyler." Bradley rolled his eyes. "Oh, here comes the defender of the poor. Watch out, Emma. Poverty might be contagious." More laughter erupted. Tyler took advantage of the distraction to slip away, running down the hall until he found refuge in the boys' bathroom. He locked himself in a stall and finally let the tears fall. At just 9 years old, he already carried the weight of being different, of not having what others did. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps us as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. That morning at recess, Tyler sat alone in the farthest corner of the playground, watching the other kids play. He opened the lunch his mother, Jennifer, had packed with such care: rice, beans, and a boiled egg, the same as always. Meanwhile, he saw Bradley and his friends eating imported snacks and drinking juice boxes. "Why do you always sit alone?" Tyler looked up to see Emma standing in front of him, holding an apple. "No one wants to sit with me," he mumbled, poking at his rice with a plastic fork mended with tape. Emma sat beside him without asking. "I do mind if I keep you company." Tyler shrugged, but inside he felt a small warmth in his chest. It was the first time in months someone had offered to sit with him. "You know," Emma began, taking a bite of her apple, "Bradley's an idiot. Don't listen to him." "Easy for you to say when you have new sneakers and a backpack without holes," Tyler muttered, staring at his own worn-out shoes. Emma was quiet for a moment. "My grandma always says the richest people are the ones with love at home, not money. In the bank." Tyler almost laughed. Love didn't pay the bills, love didn't buy food, love didn't fix holy shoes. But he said nothing, just kept eating in silence. After school, Tyler walked home slowly. The hot July sun beat down, and he could feel the pavement burning through the holes in his soles. As he turned the corner onto Maple Street, he saw his mother talking to Mrs. Dorothy, their neighbor, at the front gate. Jennifer was only 35, but looked older. Her once shiny brown hair was now dull and tied in a messy bun. The deep, dark circles under her eyes betrayed the sleepless nights spent worrying about the endless stream of bills. "Tyler, sweetheart," Jennifer waved when she saw him. "How was school today?" "It was fine, Mom," he lied, forcing a smile. He didn't want to worry her even more. Mrs. Dorothy, a sturdy 62-year-old woman, glanced at the boy's worn-out shoes and shook her head. "Jennifer, dear, I have a pair of shoes my grandson doesn't use anymore. I can get them for Tyler." Jennifer flushed, pride battling with need. "That's not necessary, Mrs. Dorothy. We'll manage." "Manage my foot. That's what neighbors are for. I'll be right back." The older woman hurried off before Jennifer could protest further. Inside the house, the reality of poverty was even more evident. Old, patched-up furniture, walls with peeling paint, the broken fan that hadn't worked in months. Michael sat at the kitchen table, his face buried in his hands. At 38, Tyler's father carried the weight of unemployment like a cross. "Any luck today?" Jennifer asked softly. resting a hand on her husband's shoulder. Michael shook his head. Tried 3 places. 2 wouldn't even let me fill out an application when they saw my age. The 3rd said they'd call, but he didn't. Need to finish. They both knew the phone wouldn't ring. Tyler watched his parents from the doorway. His father, once strong and full of life, now seemed shrunken, defeated. The hands that had once built and created in the factory now trembled with anxiety. "Dad, can I help?" Tyler approached timidly. "I could sell candy at the stoplight after school." "No," Michael slammed the table, making everyone jump. "My son won't work the streets. I'm still man enough to provide for my family." Jennifer hugged Tyler. "Your father's right, sweetheart. You need to study. It's the only way to have a better future than ours." But Tyler knew studying was getting harder. Without proper supplies, hungry, sleep-deprived from the heat, how could he compete with Bradley James and the others who had everything? That night, lying on the thin mattress he shared with his parents in the house's only bedroom, Tyler heard worried whispers. "The rent's due next week, Michael. The landlord already gave us 2 months' grace. If we don't pay—" "I know, Jennifer, I know. Tomorrow I'll go downtown again. Someone must be hiring. And if they're not, what if—" His mother's voice broke. "Let's not think about that now. God will provide." Tyler squeezed his eyes shut, offering his own silent prayer. He begged for a miracle, for something to change their lives. Little did he know his plea would be answered in a way he could never have imagined. The next day, things at school got worse. During art class, teacher Sarah asked everyone to bring supplies for the Children's Day project. Tyler lowered his head. He had no colored pencils, let alone poster board or glue. "Miss," Bradley James raised his hand, "Tyler never brings supplies. Why doesn't he get in trouble like everyone else?" Sarah, a young, newly graduated teacher, turned red. "Bradley James, everyone's situation is different. But it's not fair. My dad pays taxes so the school has supplies, and people who bring nothing always borrow." Tyler felt every eye turn to him. He wished the floor would open and swallow him. I forgot them at home," he mumbled. "Liar." Bradley James stood up. "You never bring anything because you're too poor. My dad says people like you should study somewhere else, not mixed in with us." "Bradley James!" "To the principal's office now." Teacher Sarah finally found her voice, but the damage was done. The whole class whispered, some laughing, others looking at him with pity. Tyler felt naked, exposed. His freckles seemed to burn on his shame-flushed face. "Here." Emma discreetly slid a box of colored pencils toward him. "Use mine." "I don't need them." Tyler pushed them back, wounded pride speaking louder. "Tyler, don't be stubborn. They're just pencils." But they weren't just pencils. They were yet another reminder that he didn't belong there, that he was different, lesser. Tears threatened to fall again, and he asked to go to the bathroom. In the hallway, he ran into Bradley James, coming back from the principal's office, with a smile on his face. Clearly, the punishment had been light. "Hey, poor boy," Bradley James cornered him against the wall. "You know what your problem is? You don't belong here. This school is for decent people, not slum kids." "I don't live in the slums," Tyler answered, his voice trembling. "Same difference. House falling apart, unemployed dad. My dad says people like your dad are lazy, that they don't want to work." Something snapped inside Tyler. For the first time, instead of lowering his head, he shoved Bradley James hard. "My dad isn't lazy. He looks for work every day." Bradley James, caught off guard, fell onto the floor. For a moment, he looked stunned. Then, his face twisted with anger. "You're gonna regret this, poor boy. My dad's a lawyer, knows everyone. Important in this city. I'll make your life hell." Tyler ran. He ran through the halls, past the teacher calling after him, out the school gate, and kept running. He didn't stop until he reached home, panting and scared. Jennifer was ironing clothes outside, one of the few jobs she'd managed to get to help with expenses. When she saw her son home during school hours, she dropped the iron. "Tyler, what happened? Why aren't you in school?" Between sobs, Tyler told her everything. The humiliation, the taunts, the shove against Bradley James. Jennifer hugged him tight, her own eyes filling with tears. My boy, forgive me. Forgive me for not being able to give you a better life. It's not your fault, Mom or Dad's. I know you both try. Jennifer stroked her son's brown hair. "Tomorrow I'm going with you to school. I'll talk to the principal about this Bradley James." "No, Mom, it'll make everything worse. His dad's important. He said he knows everyone." But Jennifer was determined. No one would humiliate her son without consequences. That afternoon, something unusual happened. Michael came home early, his face carrying an unfamiliar expression. Not the usual defeat, but something between confusion and hope. "Jennifer, you won't believe what happened. Did you find something?" Jennifer stopped ironing, hopeful. "No. Well, maybe. It's complicated." Michael sat at the table, running his hands through his hair. "Remember Mr. Gerald, who worked with me at the factory? The one who retired on disability? That's him. I ran into him downtown today. He's in a wheelchair now, poor man. But the thing is, he told me something. Jennifer, he said he found out something about the factory closing, something we weren't supposed to know." Tyler, listening from the doorway, felt a chill down his spine. His father looked scared. "What did he find out, Michael?" "He said the owner, Mr. Richard Montgomery, didn't close the factory because of the crisis. It was something else. Mr. Gerald has documents. He said that—" Michael stopped, noticing Tyler. "Son, go play outside for a bit." "But Dad—" "Go, Tyler, this is grown-up talk." Reluctantly, Tyler left, but stayed near the open kitchen window, trying to listen. The voices were muffled, but he caught a few words. Documents, proof, workers harmed, compensation. His heart started beating faster. Could it be? Was this the miracle he'd prayed for? The next few days were tense. Jennifer went to the school as promised, but the conversation with Principal Margaret was frustrating. The woman, a 58-year-old with a stern demeanor, listened to the complaints with apparent concern, but her words were empty. "Mrs. Jennifer, I understand your worry, but Bradley James has already been warned. I can't do more than that without concrete proof of bullying. Proof? My son comes home crying every day. Unfortunately, it's his word against the other students. And I must remind you that Tyler pushed Bradley James, which is physical aggression." Jennifer left the meeting even more frustrated. Outside, she found Victoria Montgomery, Bradley's mother, waiting her turn. The woman, dressed in designer clothes and exuding expensive perfume, looked Jennifer up and down with disdain. "Are you the mother of the boy who attacked my son?" Jennifer straightened her shoulders. "I'm the mother of the boy your son humiliates daily." "Oh, don't be dramatic. Kids play around. If your son is too sensitive, maybe the problem lies in how he's being raised. The problem is in the raising, yes, in raising a child who thinks they can humiliate others just because they have money." Victoria laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "Sweetheart, that's how the world works. Some have, some don't. Your son had better learn that soon. The world may work that way, but that doesn't make it right. Right or wrong, it's reality. And the reality is that my husband has influence at this school. It would be a shame if your son had to transfer for behavioral issues." The veiled threat made Jennifer's blood boil, but she held back. She couldn't make things worse for Tyler. At home, Michael was different. He spent hours on the phone, speaking quietly, taking notes. When Jennifer asked, he dodged the question, saying he was looking into a few things. Tyler noticed the change. His father seemed to have regained a bit of the light in his eyes, a small flame of hope that hadn't been there for months. But there was fear, too, and that left the boy uneasy. One night, Tyler woke to raised voices in the kitchen. He crept silently to the door. "It's too dangerous, Michael." His mother's voice was thick with fear. "What if they find out you're investigating?" "Jennifer, if what Gerald said is true, we weren't just fired. We were robbed. Years of work, of rights. And if it's not true? What if it's just the bitter conspiracy theories of a broken man? But what if it is true? What if we can prove it? Think of what it would mean for us, for Tyler. Or we could lose the little we still have. Michael, please, think carefully." Tyler went back to bed with a heavy heart. Whatever his father was looking into seemed serious and dangerous. Could it be connected to the factory closing? To the sudden unemployment of hundreds of parents? At school, the situation reached a breaking point. Bradley James, feeling untouchable after his mother's visit, escalated the taunting. It wasn't just words anymore. Now there were small, calculated acts of cruelty. During lunch, he accidentally spilled juice on Tyler's only clean shirt. In gym class, he kicked the ball hard into Tyler's face, claiming it was an accident. At dismissal, he hid Tyler's old backpack in the trash, making him search for half an hour. Emma tried to help where she could, but it was clear she was afraid of becoming a target too. The other students, seeing Bradley had free rein, began avoiding Tyler as if he carried something contagious. "Why don't you tell your parents?" Emma asked one day, finding Tyler crying behind the court. "They already have too many problems. I don't want to be another one." "But this can't go on, Tyler. He's being cruel." "And what will they do? His dad is rich and important. Mine is unemployed. Who do you think wins that fight?" Emma had no answer. In their world, money spoke louder than justice. It was on a rainy Thursday that everything began to change. Tyler came home soaked. His broken umbrella couldn't withstand the storm. He expected to find the usual scene of sadness, but was surprised by a different energy. His father was at the kitchen table with several papers spread out. Mr. Gerald was there too, in his wheelchair, his face serious. Jennifer served coffee, with trembling hands. "Tyler, go to your room," Michael said when he saw his son. "Leave the boy, Michael," Mr. Gerald intervened. "He's old enough to understand what's happening to his family." Michael hesitated, but finally agreed. Tyler sat down, still dripping water, his eyes wide with curiosity. "Son," Michael began, choosing his words carefully, "remember when the factory closed? When all of us were let go?" Tyler nodded. How could he forget? It was the start of all their troubles. "Well, Mr. Gerald here found out the closure wasn't because of the economic crisis like they told us." "What do you mean?" Tyler was confused. Mr. Gerald leaned forward. "Kid, your father and I, along with 200 other workers, were cheated. The factory wasn't bankrupt. The owner, Mr. Richard Montgomery, forged documents to avoid paying our severance and labor rights." Tyler's eyes widened. Montgomery. Why did that last name sound familiar? He transferred all the company's money to other accounts, declared fraudulent bankruptcy, and left us with nothing. Mr. Gerald continued, "But I made a mistake. I kept copies of important documents. Documents that prove everything." But that's theft," Tyler exclaimed. "It's worse than theft, son," Michael said bitterly. "It's destroying hundreds of families' lives. Many lost their homes, some even—" He didn't finish, but Tyler understood. Some couldn't bear the despair. "What are we going to do?" Jennifer asked, her voice tense. "We'll seek legal help," Mr. Gerald replied. "I know an attorney, Attorney Michelle, who handles cases like this. She said if the documents are authentic, we have a strong case." "But we don't have money." "Sever a lawyer," Jennifer reminded him. "She works on a contingency fee. We don't have to pay anything up front." Tyler's head was spinning. It was too much information at once, but something bothered him. "Mr. Gerald, what's the factory owner's full name?" "Mr. Richard Montgomery. Why?" Tyler's heart nearly stopped. Montgomery, like Bradley James Montgomery. Could it be a coincidence? "Dad, the boy who bullies me at school. His name is Bradley James Montgomery." A heavy silence fell over the kitchen. The adults exchanged glances. "It must be a coincidence," Jennifer finally said. "Montgomery is a common last name." But Michael was thoughtful. "Gerald, does Mr. Richard have children?" "Yes, a boy, if I remember right. Lives in Hillcrest in a huge mansion." Tyler's stomach churned. Bradley lives in Hillcrest. He's always bragging about his mansion. The reality hit everyone like lightning. The boy who humiliated Tyler daily for being poor was the son of the man who had caused their poverty. The irony was too cruel to be a coincidence. "My God," Jennifer whispered, "how is this possible?" "The world is smaller than we think," Mr. Gerald said gravely, "and more unfair than we'd like to admit." Michael held his son's hand. "Tyler, this changes everything. You can't say anything about this at school, understand? Nothing about what we've discovered." "Why?" "Because if Mr. Richard finds out we're investigating, he might try to stop us. He could destroy evidence, threaten witnesses. Powerful men do terrible things to protect their secrets." Tyler swallowed hard. Suddenly, Bradley's taunt seemed even crueler. He wasn't just mocking Tyler for being poor, he was mocking him for the poverty his own father had caused. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The following days were torture for Tyler. Every time James taunted him, he had to bite his tongue to keep from shouting the truth. Seeing the rich boy strutting around in his expensive sneakers and new electronics, knowing that luxury came from the suffering of hundreds of families, was almost unbearable. "Hey, loser," James cornered him during recess. "My mum's planning my birthday party. It's gonna be at our country house. Pool, inflatable slide, DJ. Too bad you can't come. We don't want dirty people on our property." Tyler clenched his fists. He wanted to scream, "Your dad's a thief. Everything you have was stolen. From hard-working people." But he remembered his father's words and stayed silent. "What's wrong, cat? Got your tongue?" Bradley shoved Tyler. "Or are you too hungry to talk? Leave him alone." Emma appeared braver than usual. "Look at that, the loser needs a girl to defend him." The laughter from Bradley's friends echoed across the playground. Tyler couldn't take it anymore. Without thinking, he blurted, "At least my dad isn't a thief." The silence was instant. Bradley's face turned red with rage. "What did you say?" Tyler realized his mistake too late. "Nothing. I didn't say anything." "You called my dad a thief, you lying gutter rat." Bradley lunged, but the bell rang, cutting recess short. "This isn't over," he whispered threateningly. "You'll pay for this." Tyler spent the rest of the day in panic. What had he done? His father had warned him to stay quiet, and he'd ruined everything by losing his temper. When he got home, a scene confirmed his worst fears. A luxury car was parked outside their small house. Inside, he could hear raised voices. Heart pounding, Tyler crept in. In the cramped living room, a man in an expensive suit stood radiating power and arrogance. Tall, with perfectly combed salt and pepper hair, he had the same cold eyes as Bradley, Mr. Richard Montgomery himself. "So you'd better think carefully before continuing this nonsense," the man said, his voice laced with veiled threat. Michael stood too, his face a mask of controlled tension. Jennifer gripped a dishcloth so tightly her knuckles turned white. "I don't know what you're talking about," Michael replied. Mr. Richard laughed humorlessly. "Don't play dumb, Michael. I know that crippled Gerald's been spreading lies about me, and I know you're involved." "They're not lies," Michael said calmly. "They're facts." "Facts?" The man stepped closer menacingly. "Let me tell you. The facts. I shut down a failing factory to cut losses. All legal procedures were followed. If you didn't get what you think you deserved, take it up with labor laws, not me. You forged documents, embezzled money. We have proof." Mr. Richards' face twisted into something dangerous. Then he noticed Tyler in the doorway. "Ah, so this is the boy slandering my son at school?" He moved toward Tyler, who instinctively stepped back. Just like his father. Doesn't know his place. "Don't you come near my son." Jennifer stepped between them. "Your son?" Mr. Richard scoffed. "You can't even feed this kid properly, and you're playing happy family. Look at you, living in this dump, wearing rags, eating scraps. And you still have the nerve to challenge me?" "Get out of my house," Michael said, his voice dangerously low. "Your house." The man glanced around in disdain. "For how much longer? I hear you're 3 months behind on rent. What a shame if the landlord decided to evict you." The threat was clear. Tyler saw his father pale. "You can't do that," Jennifer said, her voice trembling. "I can do much more than that, sweetheart. I can make sure your husband never gets a job in this town again. I can have your son expelled from school for slander. I can make your lives a living hell worse than it already is." He walked to the door, stopping beside Tyler. "And you, brat, stay away from my son. I don't want trash near my family." After he left, the silence in the small house was suffocating. Tyler began to cry. "I'm sorry, Dad, I'm sorry. I let it slip at school and—" Michael hugged his son. "It wasn't your fault, son." He already knew. Someone must have told him. "What now?" Jennifer asked, tears streaming down her face. "What are we going to do? He'll destroy what's left of our lives." "Not if we're faster," Michael said firmly. I'll call Mr. Gerald right now. We need to speed things up. If he's so scared he came here to threaten us, it's because he knows we have something on him. But Mr. Richard's threats weren't empty. The next day, an eviction notice arrived. The landlord gave them 30 days to pay up or leave. At school, Tyler was called to the principal's office. Mrs. Margaret waited with a stern expression. "Tyler, I've received a very serious complaint. Have you been spreading lies about the Montgomery family?" "They're not lies," Tyler protested. "Quiet. Slander is a crime, you know. Mr. Richard is considering legal action. You're lucky he's a kind man and only asked for a public apology." "An apology? For what? For telling the truth?" "Tyler," the principal slammed her desk, "you're heading for suspension. Is that what you want? To further tarnish your school record?" Tyler left the office devastated. In the hallway, Bradley James waited with a victorious smile. "See, loser. I told you you'd regret it. My dad can destroy your family with a snap of his fingers." "Your dad's a monster," Tyler muttered. "My dad's a winner, and you're losers. Always have been, always will be." That afternoon, when he got home, Tyler found his parents in a meeting with Mr. Gerald and a woman he didn't know. It was attorney Michelle, a 45-year-old black woman with a determined air and sharp eyes. "The situation is worse than we thought," she said, reviewing the documents. "Richard Montgomery didn't act alone. There's a web of corruption involving inspectors, accountants, even people in the city government." "So we don't stand a chance?" Jennifer asked desperately. "On the contrary. The bigger the scheme, the harder the fall when it collapses. But we need to be strategic, and we need more evidence, more witnesses." "The other workers are scared," Mr. Gerald explained. "Many have been threatened like Michael. Fear is understandable. But there's strength in numbers. If we can gather at least 50 testimonies, we'll have a solid case." "How long would that take?" Michael asked. "A few months, maybe a year before it goes to trial." "We don't have a year," Jennifer exclaimed. "We'll be evicted in 30 days. Attorney Michelle paused. "There's one possibility. If we can get an injunction based on the fact that you're victims of retaliation for reporting crimes." "But that would expose everything," Mr. Gerald considered. "Richard would know exactly what we have against him." "He already knows," Michael said bitterly. "His visit yesterday made that clear." Tyler listened silently, the weight of the situation crushing his small shoulders. Because of him, because he couldn't keep quiet, his family was now in even greater danger. "I can help," he suddenly said, making everyone turn to him. "What do you mean, son?" Michael asked. "Bradley James brags about things all the time. He talks about his dad, about their business. Maybe I can find something useful." "No," Jennifer was firm. "You won't get any more involved in this. You're already suffering too much at school." "But Mom, I'm already involved. What if I can help?" "The idea has merit," Attorney Michelle said thoughtfully. "Kids say things they shouldn't, but it would be dangerous." "Everything's already dangerous," Tyler argued. "At least this way I'd be doing something useful, not just getting beaten up for no reason." Michael exchanged a worried look with Jennifer. Their 9-year-old son was offering to spy on the son of the man threatening to destroy them. How had it come to this? "Let's think about it," Michael finally said. "For now, let's focus on getting more witnesses." But the noose was tightening. In the following days, Michael discovered his name had been added to an informal blacklist among the town's employers. No company would hire him. Jennifer lost her cleaning jobs. Her employers claimed budget cuts, but she knew the truth. At school, Tyler became a complete outcast. Even Emma was forbidden by her parents to speak to him. "We don't want trouble with the Montgomerys," her father explained awkwardly. One morning, Tyler arrived at school to find his desk vandalized with the words, "Liar and thief's son." His few supplies were destroyed, scattered on the floor. "Like the surprise?" Bradley James asked, surrounded by his lackeys. "It's just the beginning. Every day will get worse until you and your loser family get out of our town." "It's not your town," Tyler replied, trying to gather his torn notebooks. "Of course it is. My dad employs half the important people here. My grandfather built the hospital. My family made this town what it is. By ruining other people's lives?" Bradley James laughed. "You ruined yourselves. Weak people always find someone else to blame for their failures." Tyler felt the tears burning, but refused to let them fall. He wouldn't give Bradley James that satisfaction. At lunch, sitting alone in the farthest corner of the cafeteria, Tyler was surprised by an unexpected approach. A girl he barely knew, Ashley, sat beside him. "Hi," she said timidly. Ashley was quiet, always sat in the back of class and rarely spoke to anyone. "Hi," Tyler replied warily. "If you're here to insult me too..." "I'm not. I came because I know you're telling the truth." Tyler's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" Ashley glanced around nervously before whispering, "My uncle worked at the factory too. After it closed, he couldn't take it. Drank too much medicine." Tyler's heart ached. How many families had been destroyed? "I'm sorry," he said sincerely. "My aunt kept his things, including some papers from the factory. She never really looked at them because it hurts too much, but maybe there's something useful." It was the first time in weeks Tyler felt hope. "Really, you think she'd let us see them?" "I can ask, but it has to be a secret. My family's scared of the Montgomerys too." "Everyone's scared of them," Tyler said bitterly. "That's why they always win," Ashley replied. "But maybe if everyone stopped being scared at the same time." The conversation was cut short by the arrival of Kyle, one of Bradley James's lackeys. "What are you doing here, Ashley? Don't you know the stink is contagious?" Ashley stood up quickly, but before leaving she whispered, "I'll talk to my aunt." Tyler spent the rest of the day torn between hope and fear. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance to turn things around. At home, the situation worsened. With only 3 weeks until eviction and no income, the family barely had enough to eat. Jennifer cried in secret. Michael spent whole days out trying any job, even knowing it was useless. It was Mrs. Dorothy who brought a little relief. The neighbor showed up with a pot of soup and fresh bread. "This isn't charity," she said before Jennifer could protest. "It's solidarity. Today it's you, tomorrow it could be any of us." As they ate the hot soup, their first decent meal in days, Mrs. Dorothy shared some news. "You know, a lot of people are upset about what the Montgomerys are doing to you. Folks aren't stupid. Everyone knows something's fishy about that factory story. But no one does anything," Michael said bitterly, "because they're scared, but fear has its limits. When pushed too far, even the gentlest soul turns fierce." Mrs. Dorothy's prophetic words echoed in Tyler's mind. Could all these frightened people really unite into something stronger? The next day, Ashley discreetly approached Tyler during recess. "My aunt said you can come over tomorrow, but it has to be in secret." Tyler's heart raced. "Thank you, Ashley, thank you so much. I'm just doing what's right. My uncle deserves justice even if it's late." But Bradley James, ever observant, noticed the interaction. After class, he cornered Ashley. "So now you're buddies with the liar?" I wasn't," Ashley stammered in fear. "You know what happens to people who mess with my family?" Bradley James stepped closer, threateningly. "Ask his uncle who worked at the factory." "Oh wait, you can't, he's dead, right?" Ashley burst into tears and ran off. Tyler, watching from a distance, felt pure rage. How could someone be so cruel? That night, Tyler made a decision. He told his parents about Ashley and the chance to get more documents. "It's risky," Michael considered. "If Richard finds out..." "He's already doing the worst he can, Dad. What more do we have to lose?" Jennifer hugged her son. "Our dignity, our safety, our lives." "What life, Mom?" Tyler asked with painful maturity for a 9-year-old. "This isn't living, it's surviving, barely." On Saturday, discreetly accompanied by his father, Tyler went to Ashley's house. It was a modest home in the same neighborhood, with clear signs of better times left behind. Mrs. Martha, Ashley's aunt, was a 55-year-old woman with eyes permanently red from crying. She welcomed them into the humble living room, where a photo of her husband held a place of honor. "Ashley told me," she said bluntly, "about you gathering evidence against the Montgomerys." "Ma'am, we know it's painful," Michael began. "Painful?" Mrs. Martha laughed bitterly. "Painful doesn't cover it. But you know what's worse than pain? Injustice. Knowing the man who destroyed my Robert is still living like a king while we..." She stood and went to a cabinet, pulling out a shoebox full of papers. Robert was meticulous. He kept everything, pay stubs, memos, even informal notes. I never really looked because... Her voice broke. Tyler and Michael examined the documents. Among receipts and routine papers, they found something that made their hearts race. A handwritten letter from the production manager to Robert, mentioning accounting irregularities and suspicious diversions months before the factory closed. "This is gold," Michael whispered. "With this, we can prove there was internal knowledge of the problems." "There's more," Mrs. Martha said. Robert recorded meetings on his phone, said it was so he wouldn't forget details. "The phone's over there, but I never had the heart to turn it on after he..." With trembling hands, Michael powered up the old phone. The battery still worked. In the audio files, they found recordings of meetings where managers openly discussed laying the groundwork for the shutdown and protecting Mr. Richards' assets. "My God," Jennifer, who had joined them, covered her mouth. "This proves everything." "Take it," Mrs. Martha said. "Robert would be happy to know his death wasn't in vain." Back at home, the family could hardly contain their hope. They immediately called attorney Michelle, who came to review the new evidence. "This changes everything," she said after listening to the recordings. "With this, I can file for an immediate injunction and even request an arrest warrant." But the joy was short-lived. On Monday, Tyler arrived at school and immediately sensed something was wrong. Ashley wasn't in class, and there was a strange tension in the air. During recess, he found out what had happened. Mrs. Martha's house had been broken into on Sunday night. Only papers and electronics were stolen. Ashley and her aunt were terrified, locked inside their home. It was him, Tyler told his father when he got home. Mr. Richard found out. But the worst was yet to come. When Michael went to check where they had stored the copies of the documents, he discovered they were missing too. Someone had broken into their house while they were away. "How is this possible?" Jennifer cried in despair. "Everything was locked." It was Mrs. Dorothy who brought the answer. "I saw a man leaving earlier. I thought he was a relative." The description matched one of Richard Montgomery's security guards. They had been watched the whole time. "It's over," Michael slumped into a chair. "We lost our only chance." "No," Tyler stomped his foot. "It can't end like this. There has to be justice." "Justice?" His father laughed bitterly. "Son, learn. This now. There's no justice for people like us. The rich always win." But Tyler refused to accept it. There had to be a way. There had to be something they could do. At school, things got even worse. Bradley James was gloating, knowing his father had won again. "Heard you tried playing detective," he taunted. "How cute. Did you really think you could take on my family?" "Your father won't get away forever," Tyler shot back, even though it sounded hollow. "My father never pays for what he does. Know why? Because he's smart, unlike your dad. That's why we have everything, and you have nothing. Having money doesn't make you better people." Bradley James laughed. "Yes, it does. It makes us winners and you, eternal losers." Tyler felt tears of anger and frustration. It was too unfair. How could such awful people always come out on top? That afternoon, something unexpected happened. Emma, who had kept her distance for weeks, approached Tyler when no one was looking. "I need to talk to you," she whispered urgently. "I found something, but not here." They arranged to meet at the park near the school after class. Tyler went, with a heavy heart, unsure what to expect. "My parents will kill me if they find out I'm here," Emma said nervously. "But I can't stay quiet anymore." "What is it, Emma?" "My cousin works at the county clerk's office. He saw some strange documents passing through. Property transfers, company name changes, all tied to the Montgomerys." "So?" "Tyler, I think they're preparing to run, moving everything overseas. My cousin said it's common when someone knows they're about to be sued." Tyler's heart raced. "Do they know more people have evidence? Or they're afraid they might? Tyler, if they leave..." "They'll get away again," Tyler finished. "Emma, do you think your cousin would help? Could he get copies of those documents?" Emma bit her lip. "It's dangerous. If they find out..." "Please, it's our last chance." After much hesitation, Emma agreed to talk to her cousin. Tyler returned home with a small flame of hope rekindled, but time was against them. They had only 2 weeks before the eviction, and the family's situation was desperate. They were practically out of food, surviving on the neighbor's charity. That's when Mr. Gerald showed up with a risky proposal. "I have a journalist friend," he said. "He works for an independent blog. Are you willing to publish our story, even without all the evidence?" "But without proof, they'll say it's a lie," Michael argued. "Maybe, but it'll plant doubt. It'll make others speak up. Sometimes public pressure is worth more than a lawsuit." It was risky. Richard Montgomery could sue for defamation. But what more did they have to lose? "Do it," Jennifer said, surprising everyone. "I'm tired of being afraid. Let them come. At least the world will know the truth." The article was published 3 days later. "The Dark Side of the Model Businessman" was the headline. It detailed the factory's story, the mass layoffs, the shattered families. It mentioned the threats, the attempts to seek justice, everything. The effect was immediate. Within hours, the article went viral. Supportive comments flooded the website. Other victims began speaking up, sharing their own stories. At school, Bradley James arrived furious. "You'll pay for this," he shouted at Tyler. "My dad will sue you until you're out on the street." "We're already almost there," Tyler replied with a calm he didn't feel. "We have nothing left to lose. We'll see about that." But something had changed. Other students, who once laughed at the taunts, now looked at Bradley James with less admiration. Some even with disapproval. The story had touched many. "My dad was laid off from the factory too," one boy murmured. "Mine too," another added. For the first time, Bradley James seemed unsettled. He wasn't used to being challenged. That afternoon, Tyler came home to unusual activity. Several people were in the living room, former factory workers who had read the article and came to offer support. "We're tired of being afraid," said Mr. John, a 60-year-old man. "If we join forces, we can do something." "I have documents too," said Mrs. Rose. "I hid them well after what happened to Martha." One by one, they revealed they had kept evidence. Small things, but together, they formed a damning puzzle. The attorney, Michelle, who had been urgently called, could barely contain her excitement. "With all this, we have a strong case, but we need to act fast before he tries to flee." "Emma said they're transferring assets," Tyler shared. "Then we have no time to waste. Shall request a restraining order to freeze his assets tomorrow." Hope, which had seemed dead, was reborn strongly. But Richard Montgomery hadn't built his empire by being careless. That same night, the phone rang. Michael answered and paled at the voice on the other end. "Listen carefully, Michael." It was Richard. "You've gone too far. Take down that lying article or I'll destroy you in ways you can't imagine." "We won't back down," Michael replied, his hand shaking. "So be it. Remember, you have a son. It'd be a shame if something happened to him on the way to school." The call ended. Jennifer, who had heard everything, hugged Tyler tightly. "He wouldn't dare," she whispered. "He would," Michael said gravely. "We need protection." But who would protect a poor family against a powerful man? The answer came from where they least expected. The next day, as Tyler left for school, he found Mr. John, Mrs. Rose, and several other former workers waiting. "We'll walk with the boy," Mr. John said simply, "taking turns. He won't lay a hand on a child in front of witnesses." It was an improvised escort, but effective. Tyler had never felt so protected. At school, the atmosphere had completely shifted. Bradley James was isolated. His old friends kept their distance, not wanting to be associated with the scandal. Even some teachers looked at him differently. "It's all lies," he shouted to anyone who would listen. "My father is a good man." But the mounting evidence said otherwise. More former workers came forward with documents. The mainstream press began taking an interest in the story. Opposition politicians demanded an investigation. It was Ashley who brought the final piece of the puzzle. Her aunt, encouraged by the collective support, had found something Robert had hidden well. A flash drive with copies of emails between Richard and his accountants detailing the entire scheme. "He knew it was dangerous," Mrs. Martha explained, through tears. "That's why he hid it so well. He said it was our life insurance." With this evidence, Attorney Michelle secured not only a restraining order, but also a search warrant. The Montgomery family's home and businesses were thoroughly searched. Bradley James missed school for a week. When he returned, he was a different boy, defeated, head down, without his former arrogant spark. He approached Tyler during recess. "You destroyed my family," he said, his voice choked. "No," Tyler replied calmly. "Your father destroyed many families. Justice just caught up. He was just doing business." "Business? Stealing from workers is business? Letting families go hungry is business?" Bradley James didn't answer. For the first time, he seemed to truly reflect on his father's actions. "My mom cries every day," he murmured. "She said she didn't know anything." Tyler felt a pang of compassion. After all, Bradley James was just a child, a product of the environment he'd been raised in. "I'm sorry," he said sincerely, "but my mum cried a lot too, and so did many other mums." Bradley James nodded slowly and walked away. It was the end of an era of bullying, but Tyler took no pleasure in it, only relief. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now continuing, the following weeks were a whirlwind. The Montgomery case, as it became known, grew to statewide proportions. Prosecutors uncovered branches of the scheme that extended far beyond the factory. Politicians were implicated. Other business owners were investigated. For Tyler's family, the changes were dramatic. With Richard's assets frozen, the court ordered immediate emergency payments to the former employees. It wasn't everything they deserved, but it was enough to pull them out of immediate hardship. Michael managed to pay the overdue rent. For the first time in months, there was real food on the table. Tyler got new shoes, not name brand, but new and without holes. "I can't believe we did it," Jennifer said, tears of relief streaming down her face. "It was Tyler," Michael said proudly. "If he hadn't been brave that day, if he hadn't let the truth slip, we might never have started this fight." Tyler smiled, but he knew it hadn't just been him. It had been everyone, the former employees, Mrs. Martha, Ashley, even Emma risking herself to help. The community had come together against injustice. At school, things improved drastically too. With the story public, Tyler went from outcast to hero. Students who had ignored him now wanted to be his friends, but he had learned to value the real ones, those who had stood by him in hard times. Emma started sitting with him at recess again. "I'm sorry I pulled away," she said. "I was scared, but it was wrong." "It's okay," Tyler replied. "Everyone was scared. What matters is that in the end we did the right thing." Ashley also became a close friend. Bonded by their shared experience, they formed an inseparable trio. Months later, the trial began. Richard Montgomery, once untouchable, now sat in the defendant's chair. The evidence was overwhelming. Former employees testified one after another about their losses, their suffering, their ruined lives. Tyler was called to testify about the threats against his family. At 9 years old, he had to face the man who had caused so much harm. But he wasn't afraid anymore. "He said he could destroy my family," Tyler spoke clearly to the judge. "Said we were trash, but you know what I learned? Trash is the one who steals from others. Trash is the one who uses power to humiliate the weak." His words echoed in the courtroom. Richard Montgomery, for the first time, seemed to shrink in his seat. The verdict came months later, guilty of fraud, embezzlement, racketeering, 10 years in prison, and forfeiture of all assets to compensate the victims. When the decision was read, the courtroom erupted in applause. Former employees hugged, cried, celebrated the delayed but real justice. Outside, Tyler found Bradley James, waiting with his mother. Victoria Montgomery was no longer the arrogant woman she once was. She looked aged, worn down. "Tyler," she called, "can I talk to you?" Tyler approached cautiously, his parents close behind. "I want to apologize," Victoria said, tears in her eyes, "for what my son did to you, for what we did. I truly didn't know the extent of my husband's crimes, but I know I was complicit in the bullying and the arrogance." "Mom," Bradley tugged at her sleeve, clearly uncomfortable. "No, Bradley. We need to do this." She turned back to Tyler. "You were right. Money didn't make us better. In fact, it made us worse, blind to others' suffering." Tyler didn't know what to say. He looked at his parents, who seemed equally surprised. "I accept your apology," he finally said, "but words need to turn into actions." Victoria nodded. I agree. That's why Bradley and I will volunteer at the food distribution for the affected families. It's the least we can do. Bradley looked at Tyler. I'm sorry, really, I was awful. You were, Tyler agreed, but people can change. I believe that. A year later, much had changed. Michael had found a new job, not at the factory, which never reopened, but at a company that valued honest workers. Jennifer started a small meal prep business, serving the neighborhood. Their simple home had been renovated, still modest but dignified. Tyler continued at the same school, now with all his supplies and a new uniform. His grades, always held, backed by hardship, improved drastically. Teacher Sarah said he had a bright future ahead. The most surprising thing was the unlikely friendship that developed between Tyler and Bradley. Without the weight of money and status, Bradley discovered who he really was, a boy who loved soccer and video games, just like any other. He learned the value of work by helping with food distribution. He learned humility by seeing up close the reality his father had caused. You know, Bradley said one day, as they played ball on the school court, I think losing everything was the best thing. That ever happened to me? How so? Tyler asked, surprised. I found out who my real friends were, none. I found out my dad wasn't the hero I thought he was, and I found out being rich didn't make me special. Now I can just be me. It was a profound lesson for someone so young, but their experiences had matured both boys beyond their years. Mrs. Martha and Ashley also found peace. With the compensation they received, they were able to start over. The pain of loss would never fully disappear, but justice brought some comfort. Mr. Gerald, the man who had safeguarded the first evidence, became something of a local hero. Even in his wheelchair, he led meetings for former employees, making sure everyone got what they were owed. We should never give up fighting for what's right, he often said. It may take time, it may be hard, but justice comes to those who persist. Attorney Michelle, the lawyer, gained national recognition for the case. But she continued working in the same small office, helping other victims of workplace injustices. This case proved that no one is above the law, she said in an interview. Not even the powerful can escape forever. Lincoln Elementary School also underwent changes. Mrs. Margaret, the principal, implemented more effective anti-bullying programs. Social differences among students still existed, but there was greater awareness and less tolerance for humiliation. Emma remained a loyal friend to Tyler. I learned that doing the right thing is worth more than avoiding trouble, she often said. But perhaps the biggest transformation was in the community itself. The Montgomery case had brought together people who once lived isolated in their individual fears. They discovered the strength of unity and solidarity. Mrs. Dorothy, the neighbor who had always helped, became an informal community leader. She organized volunteer efforts and mutual aid campaigns, ensuring no family would endure what the Wilsons had faced alone. That's what neighbors are for, she repeated her motto. Today you, tomorrow me. 5 years passed. Tyler, now 14, was in high school. Tall for his age, his freckles still marking his face, but with a confidence he hadn't had before. He was the top student in his class, with a full scholarship to a good school. I want to be a lawyer, he told his parents at dinner. Like attorney Michelle, I want to help people who suffer injustices. Michael and Jennifer exchanged proud glances. Their son had turned suffering into purpose. You'll be a great lawyer, Jennifer said, smoothing her son's hair. The best, Michael added, because you know what it's like to be on the other side. You know what it means to need justice. Bradley James had also found his path. He attended the same school as Tyler. His family had lost nearly everything, keeping only the basics to live with dignity. He wanted to be a social worker. I spent my whole life blind to the suffering around me, he explained. Now I want to dedicate my life to helping. The two friends often visited the families who had been helped by the food distribution. Some had fully recovered, others still struggled, but all remembered with gratitude the moment the community had come together. Victoria Montgomery had divorced Richard and rebuilt her life. She worked as a sales clerk in a store, earning her own money honestly for the first time. Arrogance had given way to genuine humility. "I'm grateful every day for this second chance," she said. "Not everyone gets the opportunity to start over." Richard Montgomery served his sentence. On the rare visits Bradley made, he showed remorse. Whether it was genuine or not, only time would tell. But the consequences of his actions would follow him forever. The old textile factory remained closed, a grim reminder of what greed could cause. But there were rumors that a group of former employees was organizing to reopen it as a cooperative. "It would be poetic," Mr. Gerald said, "turning the symbol of our misfortune into hope." Tyler often passed by the abandoned building. He remembered the day his father came home with the news of the layoff, the start of all their suffering. But he also remembered the courage to speak, the truth, the unity of the community, the justice they had achieved. One afternoon he spotted a new sign on the factory gate: Future New Horizon Textile Cooperative, where dignified work builds a just future. He smiled. The circle was closing, but this time with justice. In his senior year of high school, Tyler was chosen to give the graduation speech. Standing on stage, looking out at the audience where his parents, friends, and community sat, he remembered the scared 9-year-old boy who had been humiliated for wearing worn-out shoes. "I learned early that the world can be unfair," he began his speech. "That some people are born with privileges while others fight for the basics. But I also learned that injustice doesn't have to be accepted in silence." He paused, seeing Bradley James in the audience nodding in agreement. "I learned that true poverty isn't the lack of money but the lack of character. That true wealth isn't in the bank, but in the community that supports you, the family that loves you, the friends who stand by your side." His voice grew stronger. "I learned that a poor boy can stand up to a powerful man if the truth is on his side. That united voices are stronger than money. That justice may take time, but it comes to those who don't give up." He looked directly at his parents, seeing tears on their faces. "Today I'm no longer the boy with the worn-out shoes. I'm Tyler Wilson, future lawyer, son of Michael and Jennifer, friend to many, survivor of injustices, and fighter for a better world." The audience erupted in applause. Standing, the entire community celebrated not just the graduation of a young man, but the victory of all of them against a system that had tried to crush them. Attorney Michelle, a special guest, waved from the crowd. She had already secured an internship for Tyler at her firm. "You have a bright future," she always said. "Use it to light the way for others." After the ceremony, Tyler walked through the schoolyard, remembering every corner where he had faced humiliation. But instead of pain, he felt gratitude. Every hard moment had shaped who he was now. Bradley James approached, also wearing his graduation gown. "Remember the first day we met here?" he asked. "How could I forget? You mocked my worn-out shoes." Bradley lowered his head. "I was awful. You were. But look where we are now. Me with new shoes, you with a new conscience." They laughed together, two young men who had learned deep lessons about justice, humility, and redemption. "You know," Bradley said thoughtfully, "sometimes I think if my father hadn't been caught, I'd have stayed that arrogant jerk forever. Probably. So in a way, you saved me too from becoming like him." Tyler considered this. It was true. Justice had saved not just the victims, but also the perpetrators, children, giving them a chance to choose a different path. That evening, the Wilson family celebrated modestly at home. The same house they had almost lost, now filled with diplomas on the walls, photos of happy moments, symbols of overcoming. "We're proud of you, son," Michael said, hugging Tyler. "Everything we went through was worth it," Jennifer added, "to see you become this man of integrity." Tyler hugged his parents, feeling the weight of the journey they had taken together. From humiliation to justice, from extreme poverty to dignity, from fear to courage. "It's not over yet," he said. "It's just the beginning. There are so many people out there who need justice." And it was true. The Montgomery case had been a victory, but Tyler knew there were many other Richard Montgomerys in the world, many other families suffering in silence. His mission was clear. Years later, Attorney Tyler Wilson would be known for never turning down cases of wronged workers, for tirelessly fighting against the powerful who abused the weak. In his office, he kept a framed photo, himself at 9 years old, in worn-out shoes beside a quote, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." Wealthy clients offered fortunes for his services, but he remained true to his roots. Bradley James, now a respected social worker, often referred cases to him. "Remember when I said you'd destroyed my family?" Bradley asked during lunch years later. "I do. I was wrong. You saved my family." He saved us all from continuing to live a lie. It was the profound truth they had learned. Sometimes the destruction of an unjust structure is necessary for something better to be built. Mrs. Dorothy, now quite elderly but still active, continued organizing the community. "Tyler was always special," she would tell anyone who would listen. "Even as a child, he had courage most adults lack." The New Horizon Textile Cooperative thrived, employing many of the former workers and their children. Mr. Gerald, despite his physical limitations, served as honorary president. "We proved honest work beats greed," was his motto. Emma became a teacher, inspired by the difference education had made in Tyler's life. Ashley pursued medicine, specializing in caring for people who, like her uncle, suffered in silence. The support network created during the crisis endured. Families who had united in hardship remained united in prosperity, ensuring no one faced need alone. Jennifer expanded her meal business into a popular restaurant, employing women from the community. "Good food doesn't have to be expensive," she'd say, serving dignified meals at fair prices. Michael, now a supervisor at his company, was known for his integrity and care for employees. "I know what it's like to be on the other side," he'd explain when questioned about his compassionate approach. The old Montgomery mansion was transformed into a community center. Where luxury once flaunted ill-gotten wealth, children now learned, elders gathered, and the community celebrated. "It's ironic," Tyler remarked at the opening. "The house that symbolized oppression is now a symbol of unity." Victoria was present, having donated the property. "It's the least I can do," she said simply. "Let it serve good, not evil." The children who visited the center heard Tyler's story, the boy with worn-out shoes who stood up to the powerful. He'd become a local legend, proof that courage and truth could overcome money and power. But the real lesson, Tyler always emphasized when telling the story, isn't about one brave boy. It's about a community that came together. Alone I was nothing, united we were unstoppable. On rainy days, Tyler still felt water seeping through his shoes, a ghostly memory of harder times. He kept the old pair stored away, a reminder of where he came from and why he fought. "Never forget your roots," he'd teach the young interns in his office. "They're what keep us steady in the storms." Lincoln Elementary School now had a support program for underprivileged students, funded by donations from successful alumni. Tyler was the main contributor, ensuring no child was humiliated for being poor. "Education must be equal," he argued in speeches. "There's no such thing as first and second-class children." Bradley contributed just as much, aware of the role he'd played in others' suffering. "It's a debt I'll never finish repaying," he'd say. Their friendship still surprised those who didn't know the full story. The oppressor's son and the oppressed's son, united by a journey of justice and redemption. "We proved people can change," Tyler would say. "A son doesn't have to repeat his father's mistakes." Richard Montgomery died in prison, never fully admitting his crimes. But his legacy of destruction had been transformed into one of unity and justice. "He thought he'd won," Mr. Gerald said at the sparsely attended funeral. "But look, the families he tried to destroy are stronger. The community he tried to break is more united. In the end, we won." It was true. Victory wasn't just in punishing the guilty, but in transforming an entire community. From suffering came solidarity, from injustice, a determination for justice, from humiliation, unshakable dignity. Tyler married a doctor he met in college, someone who shared his values of social justice. They had 2 children, raised with an awareness of privilege and responsibility. "You have opportunities many don't," he taught his kids. "Use them to help, not to humiliate." The children grew up hearing stories about their grandfather Michael, grandmother Jennifer, and the family's struggles. They learned that money doesn't define character. that justice matters more than comfort. Bradley also started a family, adopting 2 orphaned siblings from the foster system. "I want to give them what my father never gave me, true values." The 2 families were close, the children growing up like cousins. Their parents' story served as a constant lesson about choices and consequences. One day, Tyler's oldest son came home from Lincoln Elementary School, complaining that a classmate had mocked his simple sneakers. "What did you do?" Tyler asked, remembering his own experience. "I told him sneakers don't make the person. That my dad once had worn-out shoes and now he's the best attorney in town." Tyler smiled, proud. The lesson had been passed on. Jennifer and Michael aged with dignity, surrounded by grandchildren and respected in the community. Their modest home was always full of life, stories, and hope. "Every tear was worth it," Jennifer would say, watching the family gathered. "To get here, it was worth it." Michael agreed, holding his wife. They had turned suffering into strength, poverty into spiritual wealth, humiliation into genuine humility. Tyler's story spread beyond the community. It became the subject of a documentary, an inspiration for others in similar situations. But he always emphasized the collective over the individual. "It wasn't just me," he repeated in interviews. "It was Mrs. Martha saving evidence despite her pain. It was Mr. Gerald risking himself despite his limitations. It was my mother keeping her dignity despite hunger. It was my father keeping his integrity despite despair. It was Emma being a friend despite fear. It was Ashley offering help despite the risk. It was Mrs. Dorothy feeding neighbors despite her own scarcity. It was an entire community saying enough to injustice." The community center in the old Montgomery mansion became a national model. Children learned not just school subjects, but values of solidarity and justice. "True education," Tyler would say at the opening of each new project, "teaches not just how to succeed, but how to have meaning." Attorney Michelle, now elderly but still active, had trained dozens of lawyers committed to social justice. Tyler was her greatest pride. He understood, she said, that law isn't about rules, it's about people. Tyler's firm had a policy: for every paid case, 1 pro bono. Justice couldn't have a price. "I learned early that poverty isn't a lack of character," he explained to wealthy clients who questioned the policy, "and that wealth isn't a guarantee of integrity." Many left thoughtful, confronted with uncomfortable truths. On the 30th anniversary of the Montgomery case, the community organized an event. Survivors shared stories. Young people learned. History and bonds were renewed. Tyler, now gray-haired but still with the same freckles, gave the keynote speech. 30 years ago, a 9-year-old boy was humiliated for having worn out shoes. Today that boy stands here, not to celebrate revenge, but transformation. He looked at Bradley James in the audience, also older, but with the same redemptive, "Chaos, we've learned that justice isn't about punishment, it's about restoration. It's not about destroying the oppressor, but freeing both the oppressed and the oppressor from the chains of injustice." Applause echoed, but he continued. The real victory wasn't putting Richard Montgomery behind bars. It was about turning our community into proof that unity defeats greed, truth defeats lies, and courage defeats fear. Mrs. Dorothy, now 92, waved from the front row. The matriarch. Of solidarity, a living example that small acts of kindness can spark great change. Every person here, Tyler continued, carries part of this victory. Everyone who chose solidarity over fear, truth over convenience, justice over comfort. The event ended with hugs, tears, and renewed commitments. The community born from pain remained united in purpose. That night, Tyler returned to his family's old home, now turned into a small community museum. The worn-out shoes were on display alongside photos of the journey. He touched the glass protecting the shoes, remembering the frightened boy he once was. What a long road since that first day of humiliation. "Thank you," he whispered to the shoes, symbols of all he had overcome. Jennifer, still alive at 85, appeared beside him. "Proud?" he asked. "Always," she replied. "Even when you wore those worn-out shoes, because I knew there was a giant inside waiting to grow." They embraced, mother and son, survivors and victors, living proof that love and justice are stronger. than power and money. The next day, Tyler returned to work. There were new cases of injustice, new families needing a voice. The fight continued. But now he wasn't alone. An entire generation had learned that justice is possible, that united they are invincible, that truth sets them free. Somewhere in the city, another boy in worn-out shoes faced humiliation. But unlike 30 years ago, there was now a support network, waiting, hands ready to help, voices ready to shout enough. Tyler's legacy wasn't just personal, it was collective, ongoing, growing. Every person touched by the story became a multiplier of justice. And so what had begun with a humiliated boy uncovering a terrible secret had turned into a lasting movement for dignity and justice. The worn-out shoes had been mended, but the lessons learned, the bridges built, the lives changed, those would last forever. On the last day of his career before retirement, Tyler made sure to visit Lincoln Elementary School. In the same courtyard where he had once been humiliated, he was now welcomed as a hero. The children listened, fascinated, to the story of the boy who dared to speak the truth. Some saw themselves in it, facing similar struggles. But now they knew they weren't alone. Remember, Tyler concluded, looking especially at those in simpler clothes, poverty is no shame. Shame is using privilege to humiliate others. You're worth just as much as anyone, new shoes or worn-out ones. A small girl in a patched-up uniform raised her hand. Mr. Tyler, what do we do when someone laughs at us for being poor? Tyler knelt to her level, remembering himself at that age. First, remember the problem is with the one laughing, not you. Second, tell a trusted adult. Third, and most important, never ever let them make you believe you're worth less. The girl nodded solemnly, another seed planted. As he left the school, Tyler paused at the gate, taking one last look. How many tears he had shed there, how much pain he had carried, and now how much meaning he had found. Bradley James waited outside, also nostalgic. Thinking about the past, he asked. The future, Tyler corrected. About how many kids won't have to go through what we did. Thanks to you. Thanks to all of us, you included. Your change proves no one is doomed to repeat mistakes. They walked together, two men life had placed on opposite sides, but who chose to build bridges. You know, Bradley said, sometimes I dream about how things might have been if I hadn't humiliated you. If we had been friends from the start, maybe we never would have learned the lessons we did, Tyler pondered. Maybe the suffering was necessary for the transformation. I wish it hadn't been. Me too, but since it was, let's make sure it was worth it. And it was. Every tear turned into determination, every humiliation into humility, every injustice into a thirst for justice. Tyler Wilson, the boy with the worn-out shoes, had become a symbol that no circumstance defines destiny, that courage can overcome power, that truth sets free. But more importantly, he proved that when a community unites for what's right, when silenced voices find the courage to speak, when hands reach out in solidarity, miracles happen. The secret uncovered 30 years ago, the corruption that had destroyed so many lives, had turned into a truth that freed an entire community. And the story continues. In every child who learns their worth, regardless of their circumstances. In every adult who chooses integrity over profit. In every community that says no to injustice, the boy with the worn-out shoes won. But the victory wasn't his alone. It belonged to everyone who dared to believe another world is possible. A world where children aren't humiliated by poverty, where honest work is valued, where truth defeats lies, where unity overcomes greed. That world is still being built. But thanks to Tyler and all who fought by his side, the foundations are strong. And somewhere right now, another boy or girl with worn-out shoes is discovering they're not alone, that there's a story of triumph waiting to be lived, that there's a community ready to stand with them. The cycle continues. Justice endures. Hope prevails. Because in the end, the greatest secret uncovered wasn't the corruption of a powerful man. It was the invincible strength of ordinary people united by truth. And that strength, once awakened, never sleeps again. The end of the story. And what did you think of this journey of triumph? Have you witnessed an injustice you'd like to share? Leave your comment and tell us where you're watching from. If Tyler's story touched your heart, give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories. Together we are stronger.